The crimson flames of destruction painted the void as Nexari warships descended upon Kepler-7, the third world to fall under their merciless assault. Commander Yuki gripped the railing of his command bridge, watching helplessly as evacuation. Pods scattered like seeds in a storm. His forearms trembled with rage and desperation as another civilian transport exploded in brilliant orange fire. "Commander, the defense grid is failing," his tactical officer reported, her voice cracking with exhaustion. "We've lost 60% of our orbital platforms." Yuki's crystalline eyes reflected the dying light of his homeworld. The Vorten Confederation had known peace for 3 centuries. Their 7 species had thrived together, sharing knowledge, art, and dreams of a better galaxy. They had built cities of living coral, libraries that floated in zero gravity, and gardens that bloomed with alien flowers from a dozen worlds. All of it was burning now. The Nexari Empire cared nothing for beauty or peace. They were conquerors, pure and simple. Their obsidian black ships moved with mechanical precision, their weapons turning entire cities to glass. They took resources, enslaved populations, and left behind only ash and silence. "Sir, incoming transmission from the High Command," the communications officer announced. Elder Nira's ancient face appeared on the holographic display, her usually calm features twisted with grief. Behind her, the emergency council chamber buzzed with panicked voices from 6 different species. The cat-like Felarians hissed their frustration, while the towering stone men pounded their rocky fists against the walls. "My fellow defenders," Nira began, her voice carrying the weight of centuries, "we face extinction. Our fleets are scattered, our worlds are falling one by one. The Nexari show no mercy, no interest in negotiation. They want everything we have built, and they will. Take it by force." Commander Yuki watched as another of his ships exploded in the distance. The crew of 300 souls vanished in an instant, their final transmission a scream of defiance that echoed across the comm channels. "There is only one option left to us," Elder Nira continued. "We must send out a distress call across all known frequencies. Someone in this galaxy must have the strength to help us. Someone must care enough to answer." The other council members shifted nervously. Broadcasting their weakness to the entire galaxy was dangerous. Pirates, slavers, and worse might come hunting. But what choice did they have? "Do it," Yuki found himself saying aloud, though Nira couldn't hear him. "Send the signal." Minutes later, the most powerful transmitters in Confederation space began broadcasting. The message traveled at faster-than-light speeds, racing through hyperspace lanes toward distant stars. It carried the desperate voices of 7 species, pleading for help in dozens of languages. Most civilizations that received the signal simply deleted it. The Hegemony Council marked it as spam. The corporate sectors calculated the profit potential and found it lacking. The ancient Void Watchers listened with mild interest before returning to their eternal meditation. But 67, light-years away at Lunar Station orbiting Earth's moon, Captain Li Huan was having trouble sleeping. The young officer had drawn the night shift monitoring deep space communications, a boring job that usually involved filtering out stellar radiation and cosmic background noise. When the alien transmission hit his sensors, every screen in the communication center lit up like fireworks. The computer system screamed warnings about unknown encryption protocols and unrecognized language patterns. Li Huan sat up straight, his coffee mug forgotten as lines of alien text scrolled across his displays. "Computer, run full translation protocol," he ordered. "Priority 1. The AI systems worked frantically, comparing the signal against every known language database. Slowly, patterns emerged. The universal mathematical constants provided a baseline. Pictures and symbols filled in the gaps. Within an hour, the first crude translations appeared. "Help us," the message began. "Our worlds are burning. Our children are dying. We are peaceful people who have done no harm to anyone. If there is compassion left in this galaxy, please answer our call." Li Huan stared at the translated text, his heart pounding. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. They were newcomers to the galactic community, barely noticed by the established powers. But here was someone asking for help, and no one else seemed to care. He opened a secure channel to Admiral Park Mina's quarters. The fleet commander answered immediately, her sharp eyes alert despite the late hour. "What is it, Captain?" she asked. "Ma'am, we're receiving a distress call from outside our sector. Multiple alien species under attack by something called the Nexari Empire. They're asking for military assistance." Park Mina studied the translated message, her expression thoughtful. At 32, she was the youngest person ever to command Earth's deep space fleet. She had earned her rank through brilliant tactical thinking and an unshakable belief that humanity had something unique to offer the galaxy. "The Galactic Council will ignore this," she said finally. "They'll see it as weakness, not worth their time." "Yes, ma'am," Li Huan agreed. "But what do we see it as?" Park Mina smiled, and it was not a gentle expression. "We see it as our chance to show this galaxy what humans can do. Alert all ships, Captain. We're going to answer that call." The fabric of space rippled and tore as 15 human warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. They appeared without warning, their sleek silver hulls gleaming against the star-filled darkness. To the watching sensors, they looked like predators emerging from the shadows. General Vex lounged in his command throne aboard the massive dreadnought Death's Herald, his reptilian features twisted in boredom. The conquest of this system had been almost too easy. The Vorthon defenders had crumbled like paper, their pacifist nature making them weak prey for his war machine. "General," his tactical officer hissed, pointing at the holographic display with one clawed finger. "Unknown vessels have entered the system. Configuration does not match any known species in our database." Vex's golden eyes narrowed as he studied. The newcomers. The ships were smaller than his dreadnoughts but moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost organic. Their hulls bore strange markings, symbols that his computers couldn't identify. 15 ships against our fleet of 60. Vex's throat sac inflated with amusement, a sound like grinding metal echoing through the bridge. What foolish species would dare challenge the Nexari Empire with such pathetic numbers? His crew shared his laughter. They had conquered 47 star systems in the past decade. Their black ships were feared across 3 galactic sectors. These unknown vessels looked primitive by comparison. No massive weapon arrays, no intimidating spikes or armor plating that screamed dominance. Down on the surface of Kepler 442, the surviving Vorthons huddled in underground shelters as Nexari ground forces patrolled their ruined cities. Elder Cass pressed his face against a small viewport, watching the distant flashes of light in orbit. "More ships," he whispered to his companions. "But whose? Another predator species come to feast on our corpse." The other survivors pressed close, their bioluminescent patches flickering with fear. They had seen too much death already. Their beautiful crystal cities lay in rubble, their floating gardens burned to ash. Whatever hope they had left was fading fast. Then a voice crackled through the emergency frequencies, speaking in halting, but understandable galactic standard. The translator program was clearly struggling, but the meaning came through. "This is Captain Kim Jun of the Earth Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help the Vorthan people. Please respond if you can hear this message." Elder Cass nearly dropped his communicator. Earth? He had never heard of such a world. But the voice carried something the Vorthans hadn't heard in months. Genuine concern. "This is Elder Cass of the Vorthan Resistance," he transmitted back. "Are you truly here to help us? We have nothing to offer in return." "You asked for help," came the reply. "That's enough." General Vex intercepted the transmission, and his amusement grew. "Humans. I've never heard of this species. Probably some primitive world that just discovered space travel. They think they can interfere with Nexari expansion." He opened a channel to the human fleet, his voice dripping with contempt. "Unknown vessels, this is General Vex of the Nexari Empire's 3rd Conquest Fleet. You are entering a restricted military zone. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." The response was immediate and completely unexpected. "General Vex, this is Admiral Park Mina of Earth. We don't recognize your authority over this system. These people asked for help and we're going to give it to them. You have 10 minutes to begin withdrawing your forces." The Nexari bridge fell silent. No one had spoken to their general like that in decades. Vex's scales rippled with rage as he processed the audacity of these newcomers. "Destroy them," he snarled. "All ships open fire. Show these insects what happens when they challenge the Empire. The Nexari fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their massive guns charging with deadly energy. 60 warships against 15. It should have been a massacre. Lieutenant Choi Su gripped the controls of his fighter as the enemy fleet approached. His ship, the Soul's Vengeance, was one of 50 human fighters launching from the carrier, Incheon. Around him, his squadron mates checked their weapons and said quiet prayers. "Remember your training," Captain Kim Jun's voice came through the comm. "These guys fight like machines, all formation and no imagination. Use that against them." The first Nexari volley lit up space with purple energy beams, but when the light faded, the human ships were gone. They had scattered in all directions, moving in patterns that made no sense to Nexari tactical computers. Choi Su dove his fighter straight down, relative to the enemy formation, then pulled a sharp turn that would have killed a normal pilot. His enhanced G-suit and training let him survive maneuvers that the Nexari had never seen before. "What are they doing?" General Vex demanded, as his perfectly organized attack formation struggled to track targets that refused to fly in straight lines. The human fighters danced between the massive Nexari ships like angry wasps, too small and fast for the big guns to track effectively. When they opened fire, their weapons seemed weak compared to Nexari firepower. But they aimed for specific spots: sensor arrays, weapon mounts, engine exhaust ports. One by one, Nexari systems began failing. Not from massive damage, but from surgical strikes that disabled key components. It was like being killed by 1,000 tiny cuts. "Impossible," Vex growled, as his flagship's main gun array went offline. A human fighter had somehow gotten inside his defensive perimeter and put 3 missiles directly into the weapon's power coupling. The human capital ships moved like living things, their formation flowing and shifting in ways that confused Nexari targeting systems. When they fired, it wasn't the overwhelming barrage that Nexari doctrine called for. Instead, they used precise, coordinated strikes that maximized damage while minimizing their own exposure. For the first time in his career, General Vex felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. These humans fought like nothing he had ever encountered. They broke every rule of civilized warfare, used tactics that made no logical sense, and somehow it was working. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking, "we've lost 12 ships and our attack formation is completely disrupted. Request permission to regroup." Vex stared at the tactical display, watching his perfect fleet struggle against these newcomers. His confidence began to crack like ice in the spring sun. The Nexari cruiser, Bone Crusher, shuddered as human boarding pods slammed into its hull, like metal meteors. Captain Omin felt the familiar rush of adrenaline as his pod's cutting torch burned through the enemy ship's armor plating. Behind him, 20 of Earth's finest Marines checked their weapons one final time. "Remember, these lizards are used to fighting by the book," Omin whispered into his comm. "We're going to rewrite that book." The torch finished its work, and the circular section of hull fell away with a clang. Omin dove through the opening head first, his magnetic boots finding purchase on the corridor ceiling. His Marines followed, moving through the breach like a school of deadly fish. The Nexari security team waiting for them had positioned themselves perfectly according to standard boarding defense protocols. They expected the humans to enter through the floor, take cover behind the nearest bulkhead, and engage in a traditional firefight. Instead, Omin's team attacked from above, below, and through ventilation shafts they had spotted on stolen ship schematics. The Nexari soldiers, weighed down by their heavy combat suits, couldn't adapt fast enough to enemies who moved like acrobats in zero gravity. "Impossible," hissed squad leader Thex, as a human Marine literally ran up the wall to flank his position. "How do they move without gravity boots?" Omin grinned as he watched his Marines work. Years of training in Earth's orbital stations had taught them to fight in 3 dimensions. They used the ship's own structure against the defenders, turning every corridor into a maze of attack angles. Private Jo Sang swung through a maintenance hatch and landed behind 3 Nexari soldiers. Before they could turn around, he had disabled their weapons with precisely placed shots. No killing, just enough to take them out of the fight. "Surrender and you won't be harmed," Omin announced in broken Nexari. He had learned just enough of their language to make the offer. The Nexari soldiers stared in confusion. In their culture, boarding actions were fights to the death. The concept of mercy toward enemies was alien to them. Meanwhile, 15 decks below, Sergeant Kim Da found herself trapped in the ship's engineering section. 5 Nexari technicians had barricaded themselves behind a force field generator, thinking they were safe. Kim Da studied the situation for exactly 3 seconds, then smiled. She pulled out a standard emergency oxygen tank from the wall, modified its valve with a small explosive charge, and turned it into a makeshift rocket. The improvised missile punched through the force field generator, shorting it out. "Humans are insane," one of the Nexari engineers whispered, as Kim Da calmly walked through the dissipating energy barrier. Down on the planet's surface, Commander Han Sol crouched in the ruins of what had once been a beautiful Vorthan library. Around her, a dozen surviving resistance fighters listened with wide eyes as she explained concepts that their peaceful culture had never needed to understand. "Your people built this city to be beautiful," she said, gesturing at the crystalline structures around them. "But beauty can be a weapon too. Look at these light-focusing towers." Elder Cass tilted his head in confusion. "Those are art installations. They create rainbow patterns when the sun hits them. They also concentrate solar energy," Han Sol pointed out. "With some modifications, they become laser weapons. The Nexari won't expect an art piece to shoot back at them." The Vorthans looked at each other nervously. Their species had been pacifists for thousands of years. The idea of turning their most cherished creations into instruments of war felt wrong. "I know this is hard," Han Sol said gently, "but your enemy doesn't respect your peaceful ways. They see your kindness as weakness. Sometimes you have to fight dirty to protect what you love." She showed them how to use the city's own infrastructure against the occupying forces. The beautiful canals that had carried water through the city could be turned into traps. The floating platforms that had been gardens could become mobile fighting positions. Even the bioluminescent plants that provided gentle lighting could be modified to create blinding flashes. "But we don't know how to fight," protested a young Vorthan named Zil, her skin patches flickering with anxiety. "You don't need to know how to fight," Han Sol replied. "You need to know how to think. Your enemy has rules they follow. They expect you to follow the same rules. When you break those rules, you become unpredictable, and unpredictable enemies are dangerous enemies." 3 days later, the first Nexari patrol to enter the artistic district of New Harmony walked into a nightmare. The beautiful crystal bridges they tried to cross collapsed under their weight, not from damage, but because the Vorthans had quietly removed key support crystals. The lovely gardens they sought shelter in erupted with hidden fighters, using weapons improvised from farming tools. Most confusing of all, their enemies didn't stay to fight. They struck hard and fast, then melted away into hiding spots the Nexari never thought to check. Who would hide inside a statue? Who would use the city's waste recycling system as an escape route? Back in space, Captain Omin's boarding teams had taken control of 6 Nexari ships without firing a single fatal shot. The enemy crews found themselves prisoners on their own vessels, disarmed by tactics they couldn't understand or counter. "How did a mere 30 humans capture our entire patrol squadron?" General Vex demanded over the comm. "They don't fight like any species we've encountered," his subordinate replied. "They use their environment like a weapon. They move in impossible ways. They show mercy to defeated enemies, which confuses our troops, and they improvise constantly. No 2 attacks are the same." The Nexari war machine, built on rigid discipline and overwhelming force, began to crack under pressure from an enemy that refused to follow any logical pattern. Positions that should have been unassailable fell to human creativity. Defenses that had worked for centuries proved useless against improvised attacks. Lieutenant Park Jun radioed from inside a captured Nexari command center. "Sir, we've accessed their tactical database. They literally have no protocols for dealing with boarding parties that don't kill prisoners." Min laughed as he watched Nexari soldiers slowly raise their hands in surrender. "Good. Keep them confused. A confused enemy makes mistakes. On the planet below, Elder Cass watched a Nexari armored column retreat from his city's outer districts. For the first time in months, hope flickered in his bioluminescent patches. "It's working," he whispered to Hansol. "They're actually falling back." "This is just the beginning," she replied, checking her modified Vorthan crystal weapon. "Your people are learning fast. By the time we're done, the Nexari won't know what hit them." The second wave of human reinforcements emerged from hyperspace like a pack of hunting wolves. 25 fresh warships joined the battle, their crews eager to prove themselves against the galaxy's most feared empire. Admiral Park Mina stood on the bridge of her flagship Sol, watching the tactical display with satisfaction as her fleet grew stronger. "Admiral, the Busan and Daegu are reporting ready for combat operations," her communications officer announced. "Captain Li Huan sends his regards and asks permission to engage." Park Mina smiled. Li Huan had been her student at the academy, and now he commanded one of Earth's newest destroyers. "Tell him he has permission to show these Nexari what Korean engineering can do." Down in the engineering section of the captured Nexari cruiser, Void Reaper, Chief Engineer Nam-ji was having the time of his life. Surrounded by alien technology that most humans had never seen, he worked with the focused intensity of an artist creating a masterpiece. "These lizards build everything backwards," he muttered to his assistant, Petty Officer Yu Min. "Their power. Couplings are inefficient, their weapon targeting systems are too rigid, and their engines waste half their energy output." Yu Min watched nervously as Nam-ji rewired a massive Nexari plasma cannon. "Chief, are you sure this won't explode and kill us all?" "Only one way to find out," Nam-ji grinned, connecting the final circuit. The alien weapon hummed to life, but now it responded to human targeting computers instead of Nexari ones. "There we go. Now let's see how they like being shot with their own guns." The modified plasma cannon swiveled toward a Nexari destroyer that was attacking a group of Vorthan civilian ships. Nam-ji's targeting system locked on, and he pressed the firing stud with grim satisfaction. The purple energy beam lanced out and punched straight through the enemy vessel's shields, crippling its main engines. "Beautiful," Nam-ji whispered. "Absolutely beautiful." 3 decks up, in what had been the Nexari sick bay, Medic Xin Yu worked frantically to save lives. Her patients included wounded human marines, injured Vorthan civilians, and something that would have shocked most military commanders: captured Nexari soldiers. "Hold still," she told a Nexari warrior, whose arm had been mangled in the fighting. The reptilian soldier hissed in pain and confusion as Xin Yu carefully cleaned his wounds. "Why do you help me?" the Nexari asked in broken Galactic Standard. "I am your enemy." Xin Yu looked up from her work, her eyes serious. "You're wounded. That makes you my patient. I took an oath to heal people, not to ask which side they're on." The Nexari soldier studied her face, looking for signs of deception or mockery. He found only genuine compassion. In his culture, enemies were either killed or enslaved. The concept of healing a defeated foe was completely alien to him. "Your species is strange," he finally said. "We get that a lot," Xin Yu replied, applying the bandage to his arm. "There, you'll be fine in a few days." Word of the human medic's actions spread quickly through the Nexari ranks. Soldiers who had expected torture or execution instead found themselves receiving medical care that was better than what their own army provided. The psychological impact was devastating to Nexari morale. The real test came at Kepler Station, a massive orbital facility that served as the evacuation point for millions of Vorthan refugees. General Vex had decided to make his final stand there, throwing everything he had left into one desperate assault. 3 Nexari dreadnoughts, each the size of a small city, converged on the station from different angles. Their massive guns began charging for a bombardment that would turn the facility and everyone inside it into cosmic dust. "Admiral, we're reading massive energy build-up from the enemy fleet," reported Lieutenant Choi Su from his fighter. "They're going to destroy the station." Admiral Park Mina stood calmly on her bridge, studying the tactical situation. The math was simple and brutal. Her fleet of 40 ships against 3 dreadnoughts that outgunned her 5-1. The evacuation, transports loaded with civilian refugees, couldn't move fast enough to escape the blast radius. "All ships, "This is Admiral Park," she broadcast on all frequencies. Her voice was steady, without a trace of fear. "Cover the transports. We hold the line here. No matter what happens, those civilians get out safely." Captain Li Huan, commanding the destroyer, Incheon felt his heart skip a beat. He knew that tone in his admiral's voice. She was planning something desperate. "Admiral, request permission to form up on your position," he radioed. "The Incheon stands ready." "Negative, Captain. Your ship has the fastest engines in the fleet. I need you to escort the transports to safety." Park Mina turned to her navigation officer. "Set course directly for the center of the Nexari formation. Full speed." The bridge crew stared at her in shock. "Ma'am, that's suicide," her executive officer protested. "No," Park Mina replied quietly. "That's victory." The Soul broke formation and accelerated toward the three massive dreadnoughts like a silver arrow shot from the bow of a god. Her weapons blazed continuously, scoring hits on the enemy ships, but doing little real damage against their heavy armor. General Vex watched the human flagship approach with confusion. "What is that fool doing? One ship against three dreadnoughts. Has she lost her mind?" Then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The human ship wasn't trying to win a gun battle. It was heading directly for the Death's Herald, his own flagship, on a collision course. "Evasive maneuvers," he screamed. "All ships, evasive maneuvers." But the massive dreadnoughts were built for overwhelming firepower, not agility. They turned, like mountains trying to dance, far too slowly to avoid the human ship that streaked toward them like a comet of vengeance. Admiral Park Mina had one last message to transmit. "This is for every innocent life you've taken," she said calmly. "And this is to show the galaxy that humans don't abandon their friends." The Soul struck the Death's Herald at 40% of light speed. The explosion lit up half the solar system, a miniature star that burned for 3 full seconds. When the light faded, 2 of the 3 dreadnoughts were gone, and the third was a crippled wreck trailing atmosphere and debris. From his rescue pod, Captain Li Huan watched the fireball fade and felt tears streaming down his face. Around him, the evacuation transports continued their journey to safety, carrying 2 million Vorthan refugees who would live because one human admiral had chosen to sacrifice everything for strangers she had never met. "I swear by everything holy," Li Huan whispered. "The Nexari will pay for this. Admiral Park, your sacrifice will not be forgotten." Across the battlefield, human ships began converging on the remaining Nexari forces. There would be no mercy now, no quarter given. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you made humanity truly angry. The tide of war had turned, painted red with the blood of heroes. The wreckage of the Nexari fleet drifted through space like the bones of some ancient beast. General Vex, pulled from the ruins of his flagship by his own rescue teams, stared at the tactical reports with disbelief. In 3 weeks of fighting, the humans had destroyed or captured 60% of his invasion force. The survivors were retreating in disorder, their legendary discipline shattered by an enemy that refused to fight by any known rules. "How?" Vex croaked, his voice barely a whisper. "How did a species we'd never heard of defeat the Third Conquest?" "Fleet!" His aide, Commander Zill, studied the battle recordings with professional fascination. "They adapted to everything we threw at them. When we used heavy armor, they found weak spots. When we massed our firepower, they scattered and struck from unexpected angles. And their willingness to sacrifice themselves..." He shuddered. "I've never seen anything like Admiral Park's final attack." Word of the Nexari defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For 50 years, the Empire had been unstoppable, expanding their territory through sheer brutality and overwhelming force. Now they limped home, their reputation in ruins and their expansion plans abandoned. On the crystal spires of New Harmony, the Vorthan capital, crowds gathered to welcome their human liberators. Eldanira, ancient beyond measure, stood before the assembled crowds with tears streaming down her weathered face. "Citizens of the Confederation," she announced, her voice carrying across the rebuilt city. "Today we offer full membership to our saviors from Earth. They have proven themselves worthy of our highest honors and greatest gifts." The crowd erupted in cheers, their bioluminescent patches creating a light show of joy and gratitude. But in the human delegation, Admiral Kang Wu raised his hand for silence. Kang Wu had been Park Mina's closest friend and her chosen successor. Where she had been passionate and daring, he was calm and strategic. The loss of his mentor weighed heavily on him, but he carried her legacy with pride. "Eldanira," he said respectfully, "humanity is honored by your offer, but we must decline full membership in the Confederation." The crowd fell silent, confusion rippling through the assembled aliens. The Vortons had expected the humans to leap at the chance to join their advanced civilization. "We appreciate what you're offering," Kang Wu continued. "Your technology, your knowledge, your place among the galactic powers. But Earth values its independence above all else. We didn't come here to become your subjects or even your equals in government." He gestured toward the human ships hanging in orbit, their silver hulls gleaming in the light of the system's twin suns. "Instead, we propose something different. Earth will be your military protector. When threats arise that your peaceful nature cannot handle, we will answer. But we govern ourselves, make our own decisions, and choose our own path among the stars." Eldanira considered this carefully. It was an unusual arrangement, but perhaps that was fitting for such an unusual species. "You would defend us without demanding control over us?" she asked. "That's exactly what we're offering," Kang Wu confirmed. "Earth believes in freedom, for ourselves and for our friends." The agreement was signed 3 days later, in a ceremony that was broadcast across 12 star systems. As the documents were finalized, human patrol ships took up positions throughout Confederation space. They would guard the borders, protect the trade routes, and ensure that no other empire would threaten these peaceful worlds. Captain Li Huan, now promoted to command the heavy cruiser Admiral Park, established his patrol base at the edge of the system where his mentor had died. Every day he looked out at the memorial beacon that marked the spot where the soul had made its final stand. "She would be proud," his first officer, Commander Cho Bin, observed. "She'd be planning our next mission," Li Huan replied with a sad smile. Park Mina never could sit still when there was work to be done. As if summoned by his words, the communications officer looked up from her station with excitement. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command." The message appeared on the main screen, and Li Huan felt his pulse quicken as he read it. Another distress call had reached Earth's monitoring stations, this one from the distant Rim territories, where the hegemony was crushing independent worlds under their economic stranglehold. Admiral Kang Wu's image appeared on the communication channel, his expression grim but determined. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Kang. We've received word that the Hegemony Corporation is enslaving entire populations in the Outer Rim. 3 systems have gone dark in the past month, and refugee ships are reporting massive civilian casualties." Li Huan leaned forward in his command chair. The hegemony was different from the Nexari. Instead of military conquest, they used economic warfare to destroy civilizations and harvest their resources. But the result was the same. Innocent people suffering while the galaxy's established powers looked the other way. "The Galactic Council has refused to intervene," Kang Wu continued. "They claim it's an internal corporate matter. Once again, it falls to us to answer the call for help." On ships throughout human space, crews began preparing for another campaign. Engineers checked their weapons, medics stocked their supplies, and Marines sharpened their skills. Word spread quickly through the ranks. Humanity was going to war. Again, Captain Kim Jun, now commanding a squadron of destroyers, grinned as he read the orders. "The hegemony thinks they can hide behind their corporate lawyers and economic manipulation. They're about to learn that humans don't recognize the difference between military and economic warfare when innocent people are dying." Back on Earth, recruitment centers saw a surge of volunteers. Young men and women from every continent wanted to join the fleet that had humbled the mighty Nexari Empire. They wore patches showing Admiral Park's final charge, and they carried her words as their motto, "We hold the line." Throughout the galaxy, other species watched humanity's actions with growing interest. The proud Altarians, who had ignored the Vorthon distress call, now sent diplomatic feelers toward Earth. The mysterious Void Watchers emerged from their ancient meditations to observe these newcomers who fought not for conquest, but for protection. Even the Galactic Council, that ancient body of established powers, began to take notice. Humanity had proven that determination and creativity could triumph over superior numbers and technology. More importantly, they had shown that someone was willing to answer when the desperate called for help. Admiral Kang Wu stood in his flagship's teen observation deck, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the hegemony was destroying lives for profit. Somewhere else, another empire was probably planning its next conquest. The galaxy was full of predators and prey. But now there was something new in the darkness between the stars, a species that had looked at the suffering of strangers and decided to act, a people who measured victory not in territory conquered, but in lives saved. "Prep the fleet," Kang Wu ordered, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had made him Park Mina's chosen successor. "Someone else needs help, and we're going to give it to them." The human ships began moving toward hyperspace jump points, their crews ready for whatever lay ahead. Behind them, the Vortan Confederation thrived under their protection. Ahead of them, the Rim territories waited for salvation. The galaxy was learning a new truth that would echo through the ages. When the desperate called out into the void, humanity would answer. Every time, without fail, without question. That was what it meant to be human. The end.